Hello, my name is Naomi. When I was just 14, my parents drove me to my grandfather's porch, left without a word, and never came back. No calls, no birthdays, nothing. For 10 years, I thought maybe they'd had a reason. But then, Grandpa died. And suddenly, they showed up, smiling, dressed in black, asking about his $45 million estate like nothing had happened. They said they were here to grieve. But were they really mourning him? Or chasing the money they once walked away from? They tried to sue me, follow me, break me. The day they left me didn't start with shouting. It started with silence, the kind that presses against your skin like cold air through an open window. I sat in the back seat of my parents' car, my knees tucked to my chest, a sweater balled up under my chin. It was my favorite one, sky blue with the little stitched initials NC that Grandma had sewn on herself. Neither of them spoke. My mother stared straight ahead, her hands tight around the steering wheel. My father tapped his knee, rhythmic, anxious. The tires hummed beneath us, rolling down that winding North Carolina road I'd known all my life. I cleared my throat, trying to push the words up. "Where are we going?" Mom blinked but didn't look back. "To your grandpa's, just for a little while." Just for a little while. I remember that phrase, how carefully she chose it, how her voice was too even, too smooth, like she'd practiced in front of a mirror. I was only 14, but I wasn't stupid. Something was wrong. "Is this like before, when you went to Florida?" I asked. Dad let out a short exhale, part laugh, part regret. "No, sweetheart, this is different." When we pulled up to Grandpa Eldon's driveway, I sat frozen, gripping the strap of my bag. My mother still didn't look at me. My father reached over, opened the door from the front and mumbled, "Go on, he's expecting you." But that was a lie. Grandpa stepped out, still in his gardening gloves, his forehead creased with confusion. He looked at me, then at the car. "What's going on?" "They didn't say," I answered, stepping out slowly. The wheels were already turning before the screen door had even shut behind me. I didn't cry right then. I couldn't. My body didn't know how to process what had just happened. I turned back toward the street, half expecting the brake lights to flare, the window to roll down, my mother's voice to call out, "Naomi, wait! We forgot to tell you something." But nothing. Just the tail lights shrinking until they disappeared behind the curve. Inside, Grandpa Eldon set a pot of water to boil. He tried to talk, to ask about school, about the field trip I'd missed. But I wasn't listening. I kept scanning the window, every pair of headlights tricking my brain into hope. Later that night, when he burned the spaghetti, he muttered, "Guess I'm out of practice." I smiled because I didn't want him to feel bad. He brought me a forkful and said, "Eat up, kiddo. Tomorrow's going to be better." But tomorrow didn't come. Not the one I was waiting for. The guest room smelled like mothballs and old wood. I unpacked my bag, looking for the things I'd always carried. My instant camera, the birthday card Mom wrote me last year, that little charm bracelet I wore every summer. Gone. In their place was a crumpled receipt from a pawn shop in Charlotte. A few item codes. One said Charm B. Another, Kodak Instax. My gut twisted. They'd sold them. My keepsakes, my memories, my life, converted into cash. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and let the betrayal settle in like a fever. The next morning, Grandpa made scrambled eggs. I nodded through it, trying not to cry when he asked what I wanted to do that weekend. As I reached for my fork, I remembered a week earlier, asking my mom to come to my school dinner. She had smiled and said, "I've got something more important that night." Now I knew what that something was. Around noon, I took my plate to the sink, then wandered into the living room. The clock ticked loud, too loud. Every time a car passed outside, I flinched, running to the window. By evening, I stopped running. But I still watched, and waited. The days that followed blurred together. Grief doesn't move in straight lines. It swirls, clings, stops your breath at the most ordinary moments. Sometimes it was the smell of pipe tobacco lingering in Grandpa Eldon's chair. Sometimes it was the hollow quiet after dinner, where his voice used to fill the silence. By the time the funeral arrived, I thought I had braced myself for everything. I was wrong. The service was small, simple, just how he would have wanted it, no fanfare, no spectacle. A few of his old colleagues came. Some former students too, each sharing stories about how he'd pushed them to be better, how he believed in them even when no one else did. I sat in the front row, the gold key necklace he gave me resting just below my collarbone. My hands were folded tight in my lap. Then they walked in. It was like someone dropped ice water down my spine. The door creaked, a breeze swept in, and there they were, Marlon and Lorene, standing side by side like a pair of wax statues someone forgot to dust off. I froze. 10 years. 10 full years of nothing. No calls, no birthday cards, no apologies. And now here they were, dressed in black, acting like it was just another Sunday service. Marlon nodded toward the front row like he expected me to wave him over. Lorene smiled, fake and polished, and whispered to the usher, "We're her parents." I couldn't move. My pulse thudded in my ears. They didn't just look older, they looked worn, like life hadn't been kind, but somehow they still wore entitlement like a tailored coat. They slipped into the second pew behind me, as if nothing had ever happened, as if they hadn't left a child on a doorstep and driven away. When the service ended, people began to trickle out, offering hugs and handshakes. I kept my eyes low until I felt a familiar perfume, cheap vanilla and lavender. I didn't have to look up. "Naomi, my sweet girl," Lorene murmured, reaching for my arm. I pulled back before she could touch me. "Don't." Her face crumpled like I had wounded her. "We came as soon as we heard. We're so sorry. Your grandfather, he meant the world to us." Marlon chimed in, louder than necessary. "He was proud of you, Naomi. You've grown into quite the woman." That was rich, coming from a man who hadn't seen me since I was barely a teenager. "You don't get to say that," I said, my voice sharp. "You weren't there." He blinked but didn't flinch. "We made mistakes, sure, but we're here now." Now, as if that erased everything. I turned to leave, but Lorene stepped in front of me, holding out a folded slip of paper. "I know you're angry, but please, I've been sick. It's cancer. Early stage. I didn't want to tell you like this." The paper was a printout, medical letterhead. I scanned it quickly, then tucked it into my purse without a word. Later that night, I ran a reverse image search. The same document popped up on a downloadable template site, a sample from a fake diagnosis form generator. She lied. I didn't call her out, not yet, but the fuse had been lit, and it was burning low. The next day, as I cleaned out Grandpa's study, a knock tapped lightly on the doorframe. It was Virgil, Eldon's lawyer, always in suspenders, always carrying a worn leather folder that looked older than both of us combined. "I figured you'd be here," he said, walking in slowly. "He left something for you, but more importantly, he left a warning." I tilted my head. "What kind of warning?" Virgil lowered his voice. "Your parents. He suspected they'd show up once he passed. He took precautions." He reached into his folder, pulling out a sealed envelope and a typed memo. "The will reading is in 72 hours. You'll need to be there, and you'll need this." He tapped the gold key around my neck. I stared at it. Suddenly it felt heavier than before. "What exactly did he leave behind?" I asked. Virgil gave a measured smile. "Let's just say, more than memories." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, turning the key over in my fingers. My thoughts spiraled. I remembered waiting by the window all those years ago, convinced they'd return for love. Now I knew better. They came back, but not for me. "You waited 10 years to show up," I whispered into the quiet. "Let's see what you're really here for." The morning came, heavy with gray clouds, but I didn't leave my room. I spent most of the day sorting through old files, trying to ignore the mental static in my head. By sunset, the light had shifted just enough that Grandpa's study didn't feel so haunted. It wasn't just a room anymore. It was a vault, a place where his intentions had been carefully buried, protected. I walked in slowly, every creak of the floorboards under my feet making the space feel more alive. The scent of cedar was still there, sharp and grounding. His desk sat untouched, the leather chair slightly turned as if he had just gotten up. I opened the middle drawer, not expecting much. Stationery, a few loose paper clips, an old checkbook, nothing important. But something in the back corner caught my attention. A ridge, barely noticeable, where the wood didn't quite line up. I pressed against it. It popped open. Beneath the false bottom was a sealed folder marked in Grandpa's cursive, M&M, March 2011. My throat tightened. I pulled it out and laid it flat. The contents made my pulse race. Copies of legal documents, each one a fake. Signatures forged with painful accuracy. A notarized letter with Eldon's name. Except it wasn't his signature. A deed transfer authorization. Authorization to move his financial accounts. My mother's and father's names appeared again and again. I couldn't breathe. They didn't just leave me. They tried to take everything while I was still under Eldon's roof. I had spent years believing their absence was shame. But this, it was strategy. It was theft in motion. Among the pages was a letter from Eldon to his attorney, dated just weeks after the forged documents. They attempted to access my retirement accounts through falsified permissions. I am initiating full legal protection. Remove them from all access, including emergency contact privileges. Naomi will remain with me. It all made sense now. The silence. The distance. Eldon hadn't been cold. He had been protecting me. And they weren't just guilty of abandonment. They were trying to rewrite ownership, legacy, blood. I sat down in the leather chair, hands trembling slightly. I reached for the drawer on the left, needing air, needing something else. What I found next almost broke me. A journal, bound in cracked black leather. Eldon's handwriting covered every page. Some entries were mundane, weather, meetings, recipe notes, but one stood out, dated 3 years ago. I've been debating whether to leave it all to the Montgomery Foundation. It's clean, detached, no strings. But Naomi, she shows up. She studies, works, never asks for anything. She reminds me of how I started. That means something. There was more. If anything happens to me, let the key decide. I stared at the words, numb. Grandpa had thought of giving it all away, to strangers, to some clean nonprofit name. But something about the way I lived changed his mind. And now? The weight of that decision was sitting against my chest in the form of a small gold key. I stood up, carrying the folder and journal into the hallway. My feet moved on their own, past the den, into the kitchen, where I dialed Virgil's number. He answered on the first ring. I found something, I said. There was a pause. You found the file? How did you know it was there? Because Eldon knew you'd be the only one who'd look, Virgil replied calmly. He told me if you ever needed to prove intent, that file was your shield. I placed a hand on the counter, bracing myself. They forged legal papers, tried to drain his accounts. I know, he said. He stopped them just in time, but they've been waiting for another shot ever since. My voice went flat. They came back for the money. They came back for control. But it's too late, Virgil said. The will is tomorrow. Brace yourself, Naomi. You'll hear things that aren't just lies. There'll be manipulations designed to undo you. I didn't sleep that night. I sat back in Grandpa's study, surrounded by his things, by the quiet hum of the house he kept safe for so long. In my left hand was the folder filled with betrayal. In my right, the journal filled with trust. They thought they could steal what they never earned. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling as the hours slipped by. Tomorrow, I whispered, you'll learn the cost of coming back empty. I didn't even realize the sun had risen until the light bled through the hallway, cutting across the study floor. I changed clothes slowly, methodically, like putting on armor. The pendant rested on my chest, heavier than gold should feel. I tucked it beneath my blouse, then grabbed the sealed folder and stepped out the door. Downtown Asheville was buzzing, too alive for a morning like this. The law offices of Virgil Penn sat in a quiet brick building with a brass nameplate no one polished often. But it wasn't the outside that mattered. It was what was about to happen inside. I stepped into the reception area and was immediately met with silence that felt charged, electric. Lorene and Marlon were already there. She wore a sharp gray blazer, her hair pulled back like she was running for Senate. He looked even more artificial, smiling at the receptionist, as if today were just another meeting to renegotiate a contract. Virgil greeted me without a handshake, just a look. A subtle nod. They're in the conference room, he said, voice low. Everything's set. I pushed the glass door open and stepped inside. They both turned as I entered, and for a brief moment, no one spoke. Lorene smiled, far too bright. Naomi, honey. Don't, I cut her off. My voice was even, but it echoed in the wood-paneled room. Virgil sat at the head of the table. A large steel box lay in front of him, with an ornate keyhole at its center. I walked to my chair and sat directly opposite my parents. Shall we begin? Virgil asked. No one objected. I reached into my blouse and pulled out the pendant. The key slid perfectly into place and clicked. Virgil opened the box, revealing a velvet folder with a red wax seal and the emblem of Eldon's personal legal insignia. Virgil broke the seal and began to read aloud. I, Eldon William Calloway, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this my final will and testament. I leave the entirety of my estate, comprising all financial assets, properties, shares, and holdings, to my granddaughter, Naomi Elise Calloway. The air snapped. Lorene lurched forward. That's absurd. She's a child. I'm 24, I said flatly. Marlon narrowed his eyes. There's no way this holds up. She manipulated him. Virgil didn't blink. Eldon executed this will with full mental clarity. We have documentation from his primary physician. Further, Naomi was legally emancipated at 17. All of this has been legally reviewed and audited. He handed them a file. You'll find everything you need inside. Lorene turned red, her voice shrill. This is theft! I stayed silent. Then I pulled the second folder from my bag and placed it on the table. If you want to talk about theft, I said slowly, we can talk about this. Virgil opened it and passed out copies to both of them. Marlon's eyes flicked back and forth quickly. Lorene blinked, confused, until she realized what she was holding. A 2011 asset transfer form, with her forged signature, and Eldon's too. Except Eldon never signed it willingly. Virgil spoke without raising his tone. We have witnesses ready to testify that Eldon was coerced by his daughter, your wife, Marlon, into signing documents under duress. Lorene's hands shook. You can't prove... Virgil cut in, sharper now. We can. We will, and you should pray we don't press charges. Marlon turned toward her, his face tight. You told me this was real, he hissed. I didn't think she'd find it, Lorene whispered. I stood. This isn't about money, I said. This is about legacy, about the man who raised me when you walked out. You didn't just abandon me. You tried to erase him, erase what he stood for. No one spoke. You're not grieving, I continued. You're here because you failed the first time. You came back hoping he left the door unlocked. I turned to Virgil. Are we done here? He gave a small nod. I walked toward the door, past my mother's stunned face and my father's clenched jaw. But just as my hand reached the knob, I heard Marlon mutter under his breath. Then we'll take it back. By force. I didn't flinch, but I heard it. And I knew exactly what came next. 2 days later, I opened my front door to find a plain white envelope with no return address, hand-delivered and stamped urgent. There was no knock, no buzz from the intercom, just the silent threat of something waiting to break me. I brought it inside, peeled it open with my thumb, and scanned the contents. Plaintiff, Marlon and Lorene Calloway. Defendant, Naomi Calloway. Claim, undue influence and manipulation of a mentally compromised individual. I laughed, but it wasn't humor, it was fury, sharp and rising in my throat. They're suing me, I muttered, dropping the papers on my kitchen table like they were diseased. In their warped version of events, I was some Machiavellian granddaughter who orchestrated a decade-long con to bleed a dying man dry. They had the gall to argue Eldon was not of sound mind, and that I had isolated him from his biological family. They were rewriting history to erase what they couldn't control. By the afternoon, the story had hit a local gossip site. My neighbor Julie texted me a screenshot. $45 million heiress, accused of elder exploitation, family demands justice. I didn't respond. Instead, I yanked my blinds closed and locked both bolts. Just because you expect a punch doesn't mean it hurts less when it lands. Later that day, as I stepped out for coffee, hood up, sunglasses on, I saw him. Same man, same beige windbreaker. He'd been across the street the day before. Now he was sitting at the corner table outside Perch Cafe, pretending to read a paper upside down. I paused mid-step. He looked up, made eye contact, flinched. I crossed the street straight toward him. You lost? I asked. He stood too fast, the chair screeching behind him. Who are you with? I pushed again, voice cold. He took off without another word, bolting down the sidewalk like I had a badge. I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. I had enough. That night I called Virgil. Private investigator, he confirmed. Hired through a third-party firm in Knoxville. Traced the payment. It came from your father's business account. So they're watching me now, I said. They're building a smear campaign, Virgil replied. If they can't win in court, they'll try to break you in the court of public opinion. I stared at the wall for a long moment. Let them try. Before I went to bed, I sat on the floor of my bedroom with my laptop and started a digital archive. Every voicemail from Eldon, every video of us together, his handwriting on cards, medical records, tutoring receipts, old calendars with Naomi's science fair scrawled across them. I labeled each file with care. This wasn't paranoia, it was war prep. Then I recorded something for myself. A simple video, no makeup, no filters, just me. If you're watching this, it's because I forgot who I am. So let me remind myself. I'm not that girl they left behind. I'm the woman who got back up when they expected me to disappear. I hit save. The next day, I stepped outside for air. The sun was low, casting long shadows down my street. I returned home, calmer somehow, grounded. I thought I'd finally caught my breath, but when I reached my door, I saw it. A folded piece of paper slid neatly under the threshold. No envelope, just 6 words, all in block capitals. You're not untouchable, little girl. I didn't scream, I didn't call the police. I opened my door, turned every deadbolt, and sat in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the hallway, waiting. Let them come. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a cold cup of coffee still sitting untouched on the table. The hallway light was still on. I'd left it that way, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't willing to let them scare me. Not anymore. The note from last night sat under a paperweight now. I'd reread it 3 times, not because I doubted what it said, but because I needed to see the threat in ink. Cowards send messages in whispers and shadows. I needed to burn it into my memory. That afternoon I opened my email and saw the flood had begun. Was Naomi groomed to inherit? Young heiress or manipulator? Granddaughter or gold digger? The headlines weren't from tabloids. They were from mainstream regional outlets. Someone was feeding them stories. Lies packaged as narratives, tailor-made to destroy my name. My phone buzzed. Virgil. Turn on the drive folder, he said without saying hello. There's something Eldon left behind for a moment like this. When I opened the shared link, I froze. It was a video file, time-stamped 6 months before Eldon died. In the frame, Grandpa sat in his leather chair. His posture was upright, his voice firm, eyes clear. I, Eldon Calloway, he said, am of sound mind and body, and this is my declaration. I have chosen to leave my estate to Naomi Calloway, not out of obligation, but because she has shown integrity, discipline, and love without condition. This is my will, and I am aware of what I'm doing. I didn't cry. I uploaded the video. Within 2 hours, it spread across every major platform. My inbox exploded. Supportive messages from former teachers, childhood friends, threats from anonymous trolls, accusations, praise, and then came the call that made my stomach drop. Naomi, Dean Andrews said through the phone, we need you to come in. Today. I sat in his office with my hands folded in my lap. He clicked his pen too many times. Finally, he said it. There are concerns about the lawsuit, the media portrayal. We're reviewing your scholarship. I nodded once. No tears. No begging. I understand, I said. But you should also understand this. Everything I've been accused of is false. And the video you've no doubt seen confirms that. If this university is about values, then you need to ask yourself what yours are. He didn't respond, only said, we're postponing any decisions until this settles. You may continue attending classes, for now. For now. I was hanging by a thread. That night, I sat at my desk and built a timeline, documenting everything, every lie they told, every account I could verify, every move since the funeral. Then I clicked record on a live stream. The lighting was harsh. I didn't fix it. My name is Naomi Calloway, I began, and I'm not here to plead or perform. I'm here to protect what was entrusted to me. I laid out the facts, the video, the lawsuit, the smear campaign. I spoke without venom. I didn't need it. The truth, raw and bare, was sharp enough. This isn't revenge, I said near the end. This is defense. I was 14 when they left me. I'm not 14 anymore. Within minutes, hashtag spread. #stand with Naomi, #truth over blood. After the stream ended, I refreshed my inbox. One unread message, from Marlon. Subject: You just made this a war. I sat back in my chair and cracked my knuckles. Let's go then. 3 days had passed since the live stream that changed everything. I was back at Naomi Holdings, seated in the executive conference room with my senior leadership team, analyzing post-event data. We were dissecting market reactions, client sentiment, and brand engagement. To our collective relief, most responses were overwhelmingly positive. Investors appreciated the transparency, clients praised the resolve. Internally, morale had never been higher. Then the door slammed open. Rachel, my head of security, a woman who once faced down protesters in a monsoon without blinking, walked straight in without knocking. That never happened. You need to come to the lobby, now. She didn't raise her voice, but the weight behind her words left no room for debate. Without hesitation, I pushed my chair back and followed her. The hallway echoed with the sharp strike of my heels against marble, each step loud, deliberate, unavoidable. The elevator ride was brief, silent. When the doors opened, chaos greeted us. Phones, lights, people. Right in the center of it all stood them, my parents, as if they had simply wandered in off the street for a friendly visit. Lorene wore her signature strand of pearls, paired with a cream-colored suit too immaculate to be sincere. The kind of outfit worn to impress a courtroom or manipulate a camera. Marlon, ever the showman, sported dark sunglasses inside and had his arms spread wide like some long-lost patriarch ready to host Thanksgiving. They'd come prepared to perform. Naomi, Marlon bellowed, spinning to face the nearest phones. This company was built on blood. She wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. I stepped forward slowly, my posture unshaken. You abandoned me when I was 14, I said, my voice cool but firm. You forfeited any claim to my life, or anything in it. Lorene gasped, clutching her chest like a second-rate soap opera villain. Sweetheart, don't say that. We were young, lost. We made mistakes, but we are still your parents. No, I replied, cutting through her performance like glass. You were criminals. You stole from me, lied to me, sold off my childhood for drug money and cons. And if you're not out of this building in 2 minutes, I'll have security escort you out and file charges for trespassing and harassment. Marlon stepped forward, his smile gone. You're not the only Calloway left, Naomi. Don't think you can shut us out forever. A murmur swept through the crowd of employees and onlookers. Phones were now up everywhere. Someone whispered, She's live again. Good. Let them hear. I turned to the growing crowd. Let's get something clear, I said. These people, these two, didn't raise me. They abandoned me. They only came back when there was something to take. The lobby fell silent, save for the subtle hum of streaming devices. This company wasn't handed to me. I built it from the ashes they left behind. If legacy means anything, it's what we protect, not what we exploit. If you think blood entitles you to a seat at the table, then you don't understand a family. Lorene's carefully practiced expression faltered. Marlon sneered. Security stepped in, professionally but firmly ushering them toward the exit. The glass doors slid closed behind them, shutting out the past like a final punctuation mark. By the next morning, the moment had gone viral. 2.3 million views and counting. #stand with Naomi, #air with honor, #legacy over blood. By midday, the board called an emergency session. Virgil, my longest-serving advisor and a board liaison, pulled me aside beforehand. Some members are nervous, he said cautiously. They're worried about the optics, investors, media, stock volatility, standard boardroom jitters. I walked in ready. I brought with me a full packet of documentation, timestamps, videos, screenshots, a precise timeline of everything leading up to the lobby incident. I didn't just come to defend myself. I came to end the conversation. I won't apologize for telling the truth, I told them. And I will not be silenced to protect outdated notions of brand image. If silence is the price of integrity, I'd rather be loud and honest. Some board members looked uneasy. A few nodded. None objected, at least not publicly. That night, I stayed late in my office and rewrote a strategic directive that had been on my mind for months. By the next morning, we'd launched a new initiative under my foundation, Air with Honor. It was more than a campaign. It was a public-facing advocacy branch to help others who had suffered betrayal at the hands of family, especially those who'd endured abuse, financial manipulation, or legal obstruction related to inheritance or legacy rights. This was bigger than me now. There were thousands, maybe millions of people out there watching that live stream. People who had been made to feel alone, powerless, voiceless. Now they knew they weren't. As I was shutting down my laptop that evening, a new notification popped up in my inbox. It was from my legal team. Urgent. Certified mail Marlon Calloway v. Naomi Calloway filed allegations. Defamation, business obstruction, inheritance fraud. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. They weren't done coming for me. And now neither was I. The courthouse steps were slick with morning drizzle. Rain clung to the stone like a whisper, just loud enough to make you cautious. Reporters huddled at the bottom of the stairs, microphones in hand, eyes scanning for a story to devour. They reminded me of seagulls, restless, opportunistic, waiting for something to drop. I didn't stop. I didn't look at them. I didn't have to. I held the leather folder against my chest with both arms, like a shield. It contained more than documents. It carried years of silence, truths buried and unspoken, the echoes of a childhood stolen and the man who gave me back a name, a home, and a future. Inside the building, everything shifted. The air was stale and still, as if time itself had paused to listen. The courtroom filled faster than expected. The gallery was packed. Faces I didn't recognize, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Whispers stirred like wind against marble, brushing the edges of wooden benches and sharp-suited egos. Across the aisle, Marlon lounged like a man on vacation. Confident, relaxed, like he thought the whole thing was a formality, just another performance where he played the victim and walked out richer than he came in. Lorene sat beside him, all pearls and feigned fragility, dabbing at her eyes with a neatly folded handkerchief. Her tears were dry, her nerves were rehearsed. Their lawyers matched the image perfectly, expensive suits, polished shoes, expressions carved from stone. They didn't come to argue facts, they came to sell fiction. Virgil leaned toward me, voice low. Just speak the truth. That's all they didn't count on. I nodded. It wasn't comfort I needed. It was clarity, and I had it. The trial opened exactly how I imagined it would, with character assassination disguised as reasonable doubt. An estranged child returns, spends a brief amount of time with her grandfather, and suddenly she's the sole heir? Their lead attorney delivered it like a joke, raising an eyebrow and glancing toward the jury as if waiting for a laugh. What are we supposed to believe? I watched the jurors carefully. One of them scribbled a note. Another frowned. The rest kept their faces neutral. Then it was our turn. Virgil rose slowly. He didn't need theatrics. He let the facts speak for themselves. Custody rulings from 2011, showing how I'd been legally removed from my parents' care. Documentation of my emancipation, signed and stamped. Medical assessments of Eldon's mental state, each one verifying his clarity in the final year of his life. Finally, he played the video, the one Eldon recorded 6 months before he died. His voice filled the courtroom. I've thought long and hard about this, Eldon said, looking straight into the camera. Naomi's the only one I trust. She's the only one who never asked for anything except time. She never once tried to take. She gave. That's what legacy should go to. The room was utterly silent. Then it was my turn. I stood and walked slowly to the stand. My hands were steady, my voice clear. He chose me because I stayed, because I didn't walk away when things got hard. I didn't ask for his money. I only ever asked for something simple, family. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. Then they called Lorene. She walked to the stand like she was made of glass, every step measured. She clutched her handkerchief like it was proof of something real. I always loved Naomi, she said, her voice quivering just enough. I sent letters, birthday cards. I tried to visit. I wanted to be in her life, but I was pushed out. It was a masterclass in manipulation. I waited for the pause between her words to widen. Then I spoke. "If you'd loved me, you wouldn't have left," I said. "You don't abandon someone and then expect to be welcomed back in when there's something to gain. Love doesn't work like that. Family doesn't work like that." The air shifted again. No one moved. The judge, who had watched all of this unfold with the patience of someone used to human drama, finally leaned forward and adjusted her glasses. "Case dismissed with prejudice. Miss Calloway retains all legal rights to the estate. Further claims of this nature will not be entertained." And just like that, it was over. I stepped out into the daylight. This time the rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break apart, and the sun cut through in pale golden rays. Reporters surged forward. Cameras clicked. Microphones thrust into my face. "Miss Calloway, do you feel vindicated? Do you have a comment on the ruling?" I kept walking. Some truths don't need a headline. Some victories don't need confetti. I walked down the courthouse steps, each one lighter than the last, and disappeared into the noise. That evening, I returned to my apartment and curled up on the couch with a blanket and a cup of chamomile tea. The city buzzed outside, but in my living room, there was only the soft glow of a floor lamp and the quiet hum of stillness. I opened my phone and scrolled through the flood of messages. Congratulations. Media requests. Supporters sharing their own stories. One message stood out. A DM request from an unfamiliar profile. No real name, just a muted image of a seascape as the avatar. I tapped it open. "I think we might share a father. I'm sorry about what you're going through. Alec, 28, Baltimore." My stomach sank. My heart paused. Same father. Different life. A half-sibling I never knew. A silence I hadn't expected to break. The next morning, I drove out to Eldon's grave. The groundskeeper had done his work. The grass had thickened, green and soft, and spring flowers bloomed around the headstone. I knelt down and sat cross-legged beside it, brushing a few leaves away. From inside my coat, I pulled out a folded letter, written by hand the night after the trial. I unfolded it slowly. "I kept my promise," I said aloud, voice cracking a little. "They came back, but I didn't fall. You built me to stand." I reached into my pocket and took out the gold key he'd left me, the one he said symbolized more than inheritance. It meant trust, continuity, a belief in something better than the past. I set the key gently on the stone, letting it rest there for a long moment, catching the morning light. Then I picked it back up and fastened it around my neck again. That night, I stared at Alec's message for a long time, fingers hovering over the screen. There was a new story waiting. This time, I typed, "Tell me your story." The hum of the copier beside my desk clicked off as I signed the last document in the stack. Just like that, it was official. The Eldon Legacy Foundation existed, legally, structurally, and spiritually. I leaned back in my chair, watching the ink dry on the paper bearing my grandfather's name, not as a benefactor or donor, but as a symbol of second chances. For the first time in a long time, the air in the office didn't feel like a battlefield. No phone calls from lawyers, no press ambushes at the elevator, no crisis to navigate. Just peace. The press launch happened on a cloudy Thursday, in the garden Eldon used to read in every Sunday. I stood at a podium that felt far too big until I looked up and saw the faces gathered, former teachers, youth counselors, volunteers, and a few teenagers whose eyes held the kind of silent fear I knew too well. "This foundation isn't about me," I began, adjusting the mic. "It's not about the Calloway name. It's about what we do when someone chooses to see us, not as broken, but as becoming." The applause wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind that stayed with you long after you stepped off the stage. Later that evening, I returned to Eldon's house, still mine, though it never felt like just property. I wandered through his study, fingers brushing over book spines, picture frames, his old globe. I don't know what made me open the bottom drawer of his file cabinet, but I did. A leather-bound notebook rested inside. Its pages were delicate with age, ink faded slightly at the edges. Toward the back, a dated entry caught my eye. I wanted to forgive Marlon. I wanted to believe he could grow. But then, Naomi brought me coffee on a day my hands were shaking and asked me what kind of cookies I liked. No agenda, no angle. Just kindness. I couldn't risk her being hurt again. So I locked the gate behind me, not because I didn't love my son, but because I loved my granddaughter more. I closed the notebook slowly, pressing my palm over the cover. Not grief, not anymore. Gratitude. A few days later, I met Alec. He didn't look like Marlon, thank God. We met at a quiet cafe tucked between two art galleries downtown. He was already seated when I arrived, nervously flipping through the menu. I sat across from him, letting the silence linger just long enough to feel real. "I don't want anything from you," he said finally. "I just thought, maybe we both lost something. Maybe talking helps." "Blood made us siblings," I replied. "Let's see if honesty can make us anything else." He smiled, and for once I smiled back without hesitation. Weeks passed. The foundation held its first outreach session. I visited one of our partnered shelters that afternoon, where a young girl, barely 13 maybe, approached me shyly. "Do you think people can start over?" she asked. I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her eyes. "I don't just think it," I said. "I know it." That night, walking into the main hallway of the Eldon Legacy Center, I passed his portrait. It hung above the entrance now, surrounded by stories we were collecting, each one written by someone who survived, rebuilt, or simply endured. I looked up at him. "They tried to define me by what they abandoned," I whispered, "but I chose to define myself by what I built." My phone buzzed. Another message from Alec. "Want to meet again next week?" I typed back, "Yeah, let's." Before I go, I want to say this. If you've ever been left behind, lied to, or made to feel small by the people who were supposed to love you first, you're not alone. I've been there, and I made it out. Not because I'm stronger than anyone else, but because I stopped waiting for closure from those who broke me and started creating it for myself. Legacy isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about choosing kindness when cruelty taught you silence. It's about choosing to build when others tried to tear you down. And sometimes, it's about letting go of what hurt you, not to forget it, but to prove it didn't win. To anyone watching who's facing a storm, whether it's family betrayal, legal injustice, or just the pain of being misunderstood, I see you. And you're not defined by who left. You're defined by who you decide to become. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you thought you'd never let go? Or maybe you're still holding on, wondering if they'll ever change? Let me know in the comments, what hit home for you in this story? If this video touched your heart, type 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't speak to you, I still want to know why. Drop your thoughts, and let's talk about it. And if you want more real stories that speak truth, healing, and second chances, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because I've got more stories coming, and you deserve to hear every one of them. Thank you for being here. Really.
My name is Noah, and right now, I'm fishing on a levee. The trick to catching fish is to stay calm and keep a low profile. As I watch the line I've cast, my mind drifts back to yesterday's scolding from my boss. I work in sales at a moving company, a job I got into after starting as a part-timer in high school. A few years later, I got transferred and ended up with a terrible boss named Susan. Susan, now in her 40s, has a hysterical scream that's tough to handle. "You're the only one in our department who hasn't met this period's goals. You're dead weight here," she yelled. She always brings up my educational background whenever she can. I didn't go to college. I joined this company straight out of high school. Ironically, Susan went to a vocational school for illustration. She used to be an illustrator, but after failing to realize her dream, she's been in this industry for almost 20 years. At drinking parties, a drunk Susan would loudly lament, "I should have gone to university instead of that vocational school." She's clearly frustrated with her life choices. Susan's complex about her education is serious. She's awkward around college-educated newcomers and tries to demean people like me with only a high school education. Frankly, I've been experiencing daily harassment from Susan. But in this department, her word is law due to her long tenure. No one defends me from her harassment. Instead, they side with Susan, leaving me to face cold stares. It's hard to maintain a calm and clear mind, even when I'm fishing. Hey No, what's up? Your line is shaking. My fishing buddy George alerts me, snapping me out of my thoughts. Got something on your mind? George is an avid fisherman who would even go fishing at sea during long holidays. His skin is tanned, and he always has a pleasant smile. No, I'm fine. I shake my head and refocus on fishing. I can't let my personal issues disturb George's enjoyable private time. Oh, now you're focused. George laughs. It's only when I'm fishing like this that I can forget the unpleasant things. After refocusing, I got a hit on my fishing rod. When I reeled it in, it turned out to be a pretty big catch. My fishing buddies erupted in cheers. Nice catch. This must be the king of this area. Your family will be thrilled. George rejoices as if it's his own achievement. I feel my face stiffen momentarily, but quickly muster a smile. Even on a day when I catch a big one, I'm still bogged down with worries. I sigh inwardly. I just couldn't bring myself to say it in front of George that my wife was having an affair. I have a wife, Helen, and a daughter, Sarah, who just turned 11. Even when things got tough, I could keep going by thinking of my family. But lately, Helen's behavior has been strange. She's unusually cold towards me, and I feel like she's distancing herself. That's not all. Recently, I saw Helen dressed up, walking with a man I didn't recognize on my way back from work. I watched the scene in disbelief. I couldn't believe Helen would. It just didn't seem possible. I was too afraid to confront her about the truth, so I still haven't asked. I hope it's just my misunderstanding. As pathetic as it sounds, I find myself wanting to ignore it more and more each day. I thought showing her the fish I caught today might improve our relationship, even just a little. So, with that faint hope, I hurried back home, packing the fish in a cooler. But my wishful thinking quickly crumbled. Helen didn't even glance at the fish I brought home and instead handed me a piece of paper that wiped the smile off my face. It said, "Divorce." No way, are you kidding? Even as I said that, Helen's cold expression didn't change. I'm tired of being with a man who's gloomy, boring, and smells like fish. I want to start my life over. I was stunned by Helen's harsh words. Start over? Are you saying you're going to be with that man? I finally confronted Helen about seeing her with another man a few weeks ago and accused her of cheating. Helen looked surprised for a moment, saying, "You saw that, huh?" But then she blamed me, saying, "It's all your fault. You've always been so incompetent." Such a selfish reason, but I, not good with words, couldn't come up with a good response. I yelled, "The affair was your doing." Yet Helen retorted, "Do you even know how much you earn? With that salary, you expect me to do all the housework and take care of Sarah while working. What are you acting so high and mighty for?" Sure, I had my shortcomings, but I never intended to put everything on Helen. However, it's partly true that she had more burden, and I found myself at a loss for words. I always got out-argued in arguments. In the end, I couldn't stop Helen, and she left the house with our daughter Sarah. All I could do was watch Sarah leave with a sad face. The next weekend, I was standing absent-mindedly on the breakwater where I usually fish. The evening sky turned the sea an orange hue. They say staring at the vast ocean makes your troubles seem small, but just looking at the sea won't bring Helen and Sarah back. My worries only grew day by day. I had no love left for Helen. I couldn't forgive her for driving me to utter despair. I thought, go wherever you want with another man, but the problem was our daughter, Sarah. I want to live with my beloved daughter, but now, in the midst of a custody battle. Knowing that the mother gets custody 90% of the time, the odds seemed grim. Even if the divorce is due to the wife's infidelity, it's bizarre how the custody usually doesn't go to the husband. Will I never be able to live with Sarah again? The more I thought about it, the more depressed I became. And then, at that moment, my fishing buddy George suddenly asked me, "Hey Noel, I thought you had left already. What's with that look? Like you're about to jump into the sea." Hearing this, I almost burst into tears. Normally, I would just smile and say it's nothing. But today, I just couldn't. I poured out all my pent-up emotions to George. I told him about being constantly berated by my boss at work, about my wife cheating on me and filing for divorce, taking our daughter away, and how I felt utterly hopeless. I've been told I'm worthless by both my job and my family. Maybe I should just jump into the sea. I couldn't hold back my tears. They just kept flowing. I was sobbing so much I could barely speak, but George just looked at me straight and listened to everything I had to say. He grabbed my shoulders firmly and said, "Just being alive and able to fish is enough, isn't it?" His compassionate smile finally calmed my heart. "Noah, if you were gone, I'd lose my fishing mentor. That would be a real problem for me. Can you keep living, thinking of it as a favor for me?" Mentor. I hardly ever catch big fish. What are you talking about? I fish more than anyone, and yet the other day I ended up catching a plastic bottle. Seriously, there's too much plastic trash these days. Maybe I should become an environmental activist. George's joke made me laugh. He is a really funny guy. I realized he has this charisma that draws people in, and his kind nature is probably what everyone loves about him. Thanks, George. I'll try a bit harder. Good to hear, Noah. But remember, it's important to muster up the courage to fight sometimes. Fight, Jess, please. Muster up the courage to fight. I'll pick up the pieces for you. Picking up pieces. That sounds like you're expecting me to die. I couldn't help but smile wryly at George's words. But indeed, I had been running from conflict, always just taking whatever was thrown at me. Is this really how it should be? George's words made me question for the first time what it means to fight. The next day, when I went to work, I got yelled at by Susan again. "Your shirt is all wrinkled. Do you even care about your job? If you don't, just leave." It was the same old yelling, just using me as a stress reliever. Yesterday, the day before, and the day before that, I had been constantly bombarded with such yelling every single day. I had enough. Remembering what George said, I finally understood what it meant to fight. I had a part in this too. If I didn't like it, I should speak up, I told myself. Then I glared at Susan and said, "So, it's okay if I leave." Her face changed color as she wasn't expecting me to talk back. What? Well, it's not a problem. I could see she was clearly shaken. I slammed the resignation letter I had written earlier onto Susan's desk. "Then please submit this to our president." The atmosphere in the office changed instantly. "I can't believe Noah is snapping," someone said in a frightened voice. Fine. If you insist that much, I'll take your resignation letter to the president's office right away." With a huff, Susan gripped my resignation letter and headed towards the president's office. So, this is the end of this company I have worked for so many years. The thought made me feel a bit sad. I did love my job here. Well, for now, I'll head to my usual fishing spot this coming weekend. I'll make sure George picks up my pieces as he promised. Just as I was thinking about this and started to tidy up my desk, it happened suddenly. The phone on my desk rang. The call was from the president's office. Maybe it's about the resignation letter. Thinking this, I answered the phone and was told, "Please come to the president's office immediately." I left my desk as it was and headed straight there. Entering the president's office, I found Mr. Thompson, the president, and Susan inside. Surprisingly, Susan suddenly apologized to me. "I'm sorry. I went too far. Please reconsider submitting your resignation. I was puzzled about what was happening, but Mr. Thompson explained, Noah, you were handling our major client, Bridgewater Commercial, but recently Susan took over, right? Yes, that's correct. I was in charge of Bridgewater Commercial until last week. I always believed in nurturing relationships with our existing clients just as much as acquiring new ones, so I took care to handle them meticulously. However, due to low sales, Susan finally took over the account. About that, the client has said, if it's not Noah, we may reconsider our business with you. What? Mr. Bridgewater said that? It's a problem. Mr. Bridgewater personally lodged a complaint, and just when Susan brought in your resignation, I ordered her to convince you to stay. I see, so that's what this is about. I glared hard at Susan. She seemed a bit intimidated. Now was the time to truly fight. I have been suffering from workplace harassment by Susan. At this, President Thompson's expression changed. What? What do you mean, Susan? Susan stammered, I told Mr. Thompson about all the abuse I had endured from her. If Susan stays, I still intend to leave. Mr. Thompson then said gravely, Understood. Workplace harassment is a serious issue in this day and age. We will thoroughly review our conduct. A few days after this meeting, an internal inquiry confirmed the harassment by Susan, and she was demoted and transferred. It was an unusually quick decision. The company wanted to restore trust with Bridgewater Commercial as soon as possible, so I was put back in charge of Bridgewater Commercial. Come the weekend, I went fishing as usual. George was next to me, and I told him about Susan's transfer. Wow, you did it after all. You fought well, Noah. No, it's all thanks to your advice, George. I'm truly grateful, and I'm happy to be back handling the Bridgewater Commercial account. That's great, Noah. I'm glad to be working with you again. Thank you. I look forward to continuing our work together, Mr. Bridgewater. Hey, drop the Mr. Bridgewater when we're off the clock. George waved his hand shyly. Actually, the president of Bridgewater Commercial was none other than George Bridgewater himself. Thinking back, my success in this major deal was thanks to my hobby of fishing. Being able to fish alongside George like this was also due to his invitation during a business meeting, asking, how ought we go fishing together next time? Of course, this recent issue was also resolved with George's help. He had said he'd pick up my pieces, but I never expected him to go this far. I can't thank him enough. I said this and bowed my head many times, but George looked at me and said, the fight isn't over yet, right? That's right, I replied. I still had a big battle ahead of me. It was a custody battle for my daughter, Sarah. If you win custody, bring your daughter here again, George said with a smile. I nodded firmly in response. Half a year passed. I fought. I confronted my wife, Helen, head-on. Finally, the verdict was out. I went to the fishing spot where George was to report the outcome, with my daughter in tow. In the end, George had helped me again. Being a business owner, he knew many good lawyers and referred one to me. Thanks to that, the court proceedings went in my favor, and now I am able to live with my daughter, Sarah. Sarah, like me, has trouble speaking up. She couldn't express herself to her mother, but when the lawyer facilitated a conversation, she expressed her desire to stay with me, saying, I want to be with Daddy. The battle is finally over, Noah, George said, intently watching his fishing line. I whispered, yes, in response. I always felt pathetic, always being helped by George. To my slight dejection, George asked, Sarah, do you like your dad? Sarah, who became a 6th grader this year, seemed embarrassed to say I like out loud. Perhaps because of shyness, she hesitated with an E, but then nodded silently afterward. That's right. Your dad might not look dependable, but he's the kind of person who always looks out for others and supports them in the background. To think that he saw me in such a way, George's words made me so happy. I realized that what I had been doing wasn't wrong and decided to continue tackling everything with compassion. Then George's fishing line tugged violently. Oh, here it comes, a big one. After a long time, "Careful, George, take it slow." I said this and readied the net to support George, who was frantically managing his fishing rod. When I got back from work, I found my neighbor, a battered woman, standing in front of my house. She looked so cold and miserable that I couldn't just leave her there. I invited her inside, offered her a bath, and made her a meal. Curious about what had happened, I asked her about her situation. 3 weeks later, a stern-looking man in a black suit knocked on my door. "Please accept the rights to a $6 million house," he said. "What?" "My name is Lucas. I'm just an average office worker, nothing special. But one thing sets me apart. My parents have passed away. If they had died from an illness or old age, it might be a common situation. But in my case, it was different. About a month after I started at my current job, I was still learning the ropes. One day, my boss approached me, looking pale. "Lucas, stay calm," the police called. "Your parents were hit by a runaway car and taken to the hospital." My mind went blank. My coworker at the next desk froze, his hand stopping on the keyboard. "We're going to the hospital now," my boss said. "I'll drive you there. Stay strong." My bosses were amazing. They took me to the hospital and stayed by my side. At the hospital, a uniformed police officer greeted me and led me to the morgue. My parents had been hit by a car driven by an elderly person who had a heart attack and couldn't brake. They died instantly, as did the driver. I collapsed, and my boss held me up, guiding me to a chair. I couldn't stop shaking. The driver's family arrived, and his son, looking about my dad's age, apologized repeatedly. "I'm so sorry, my father. I'm so sorry." My boss stepped in, protecting me. "I understand you've lost your father too, but he's just lost both his parents. Apologizing now isn't appropriate." The man's shoulders shook. "Please come back another day with a lawyer." Thanks to my boss, I didn't lash out. The driver's family left, and my boss comforted me. "You need to rest. The company will handle everything." The company really did take care of everything. I received compensation and a formal apology with a lawyer present. The driver's family kept apologizing, but with the driver gone, there was no one to direct my anger at. I accepted the money and moved on, avoiding further involvement with the family. I continued living alone in the house I shared with my parents. The surrounding neighborhood had new, impressive buildings, and the house next door had recently been occupied. I noticed the moving truck, but never saw who moved in. People these days often skip greetings due to privacy concerns. The Young family next door must have been like that. I thought I'd at least say hello. A few days later, on my way home from work, just as I was about to reach my house, I witnessed a woman walking in front of me drop her groceries as her paper bag tore. Hearing the woman's small cry, I immediately rushed over. I picked up an orange that had rolled to my feet and went over to the woman. But it would be difficult for her to carry everything home in the torn paper bag, so I offered her my own reusable bag that I always carry, saying, "Please put everything in here to take home." "What? But my house is right there," she said when I pointed to my house. "Oh, I see," she responded, sensing something odd about the context. It seemed the woman lived in the luxurious house next door. The woman's name was Emily. Emily was, how should I put it, extremely thin, and her voice was faint and small when she spoke. Emily seemed a bit surprised to learn I lived next door. Well, I can say I don't understand that feeling. After all, my house is so run down you couldn't even flatter it by calling it a nice home. "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed an elderly person lived there." "No, it's an old house, so it can't be helped," I replied to the apologetic Emily with a wry smile. Um, I'm sorry for not introducing myself. My husband said moving and greetings aren't necessary these days. So I figured as much. I know many people nowadays think neighborly relations are unnecessary. About this reusable bag, I'll return it right away, so please wait a moment. Emily hurried inside, saying that. I watched her go, and after waiting a bit, Emily came back holding something. The neatly folded reusable bag and beautifully wrapped cookies. I'm pretty confident in my baking. Please have some if you'd like. Inside the cute wrapping were delicious-looking cookies that could pass for store-bought. The simple bite-sized round cookies looked like something you'd make at home with kids. Thank you. Did you make these with your children? No, I don't have kids. It's just me and my husband living here. I see. Even if I wrap them like this, I'm the only one who eats what I make, but I enjoy both making and eating sweets. I could tell that Emily, who smiled softly like that, really loved baking. However, the fact that she's the only one eating them means her husband probably doesn't eat these sweets. Thanks for the cookies. I said a quick word and opened the wrapping on the spot to eat a cookie. The bite-sized cookie had a vanilla flavor and crumbled softly in my mouth. It was truly delicious, no flattery needed. Delicious. It's been a while since I had such tasty cookies. I can feel your passion for baking. I expressed my thoughts, including my gratitude. Emily probably didn't expect me to open the wrapping and eat one right then and there. After looking at me in surprise, she thanked me with a big smile. Thank you so much. It started from that day. Emily and I never exchanged contact information, but we started frequently greeting each other. Also, after I got home from work and turned on the lights, a few minutes later, the intercom would ring. My intercom is an old one that goes ding when pressed and dong when released. But when I went to the front door, Emily had started bringing me sweets. At first, I intended to refuse. After all, she was a married woman, and I understood this wasn't exactly praiseworthy behavior. However, her actions clearly stemmed from a desire for someone to eat the sweets she made. Talking to her, I learned that Emily's husband, Mark, was devoted to his work, and the couple never went out together. They were still a young couple, but with no kids, their life must have lost its color. Could she be lonely like me? I realized Emily's loneliness. Once I did, I couldn't flatly refuse and started accepting her sweets and giving my thoughts, saying things like, "Yesterday's baked goods had a great texture and went well with coffee. I like them." Or, "Those crispy sweets are perfect when you want a little snack. They're bite-sized, so you can eat them while working." I could have as many as I want. This became the norm. Emily would then head home looking blissfully happy with a big smile. I spent several weeks like that. I know this lifestyle isn't good. Emily is a married woman, yet I found myself growing more and more fond of her presence. My heart, which had gone cold after suddenly losing my parents, was starting to feel warm again. Just seeing Emily's smile made my wintry night-like heart feel the warm rays of a spring sun. I never visited her house. I just waited for Emily to bring me sweets. Then, one day, Emily stopped bringing sweets. She had been bringing them every other day, if not every day. Did her husband find out? A wife bringing homemade sweets to a single man's house. It's only natural to suspect infidelity. I'm innocent, but from the husband's perspective, he can't be at peace. It's going to be lonely again. Ever since Emily stopped coming, I've been feeling the same loneliness as when I lost my parents. No, even greater loneliness than back then. I've been spacing out more at work, making even my boss and manager worry. I don't really have any hobbies, so nothing is fun, no matter what I do. Gradually, my appetite diminished, and even when eating things I like, it felt like chewing on sand, making it even harder to eat. I could feel my energy draining, but even though I knew this wasn't good, there was nothing I could do about it. Geez, I was starting to feel a creeping sense of despair about various things when I finished work that day and headed home. I've been feeling heavy this whole time, and I know I need to snap out of it, but I just can't get motivated. Thinking that, I lifted my head and saw a figure in front of my house. That swaying shadow would make you think it was a ghost. Huh. That figure wasn't a ghost, of course, but her hair was a mess and her feet were bare. She wasn't even wearing sandals, let alone shoes. But that figure was unmistakably Emily. I hurried over to her with a start. Emily? Getting closer, I could see clearly. The clothes Emily was wearing were dirty, and she wasn't even wearing a coat. It's winter now. Emily was thoroughly chilled to the bone. When Emily, who had been hugging her own arms, embraced me, my course of action was decided. Emily, please come inside the house. I'm sorry. Her voice was so faint, I knew she was nearing her limit. I urged Emily into the house, my hand on her back. I immediately put the heater on and made Emily a hot chocolate. Here you go. In the brighter room, I could see that Emily was terribly dirty, and being barefoot, she looked miserable from head to toe. What on earth happened to you? I'm sorry. I'm not accusing you. Why were you outside in that state in this season? Actually, my husband kicked me out of the house. What? Emily told me the circumstances, sniffling and sobbing. She said her husband had kicked her out of the house 3 days ago. What was he thinking, kicking her out in this cold weather in light clothing? If it rained or snowed, she'd freeze in no time. Since that long ago, where were you for those 3 days? I'm embarrassed to say, but the park. What? You were homeless? I furrowed my brows at Emily's reply and showed her to the bathroom. I have many things I'd like to ask, but you must be cold, right? Please use the bath. But I'm dirty, so it's a bath. Feel free to use my mother's soap and shampoo. I explained the soap, shampoo, and hairdryer in the bathroom. For a change of clothes, I offered some of my mother's. Emily seemed hesitant but nodded, as if enjoying a bath for the first time in a while. While she was in the bath, I prepared a simple meal. Tonight's dinner was tater tots I bought from the nearby shopping district, 1 serving of chicken noodle soup split between 2 people that's easy on the stomach, and a salad with just lettuce, cucumber, and cherry tomatoes. Add some meat, and it's a sufficient meal. If it were just me, I would have made do with just the tater tots and soup. Just as I finished preparing, Emily came out of the bath. She tilted her head, asking about the 2 meals laid out on the table. Where are your parents? Oh, it's just me. What? I lost them in an accident. I was reluctant to say it, not wanting to worry kind Emily, but there was no hiding it in this situation. When I honestly told her that my parents had passed away in an accident, Emily shed large tears and grieved for me. Just that warmed my heart. So these clothes belong to your mother, and you cherish them, right? Yes, but if no one wears them, they'll just get eaten by moths. Thank you for lending them to me. After that, we had dinner facing each other. Emily said, "It's really delicious," and ate in a way that made it clear she truly found it tasty, which made me happy and enabled me to properly eat a meal for the first time in a while. Afterwards, I made some warm tea and asked Emily to tell me more. Even if it's meddlesome, sometimes letting it all out when you're going through a hard time can make you feel better. The story Emily told was terrible. My husband has chauvinistic views. Women should shut up and do as men say, walk 3 steps behind a man, wake up earlier than a man, don't go to bed before a man, he says. He sounds way too old-fashioned. What's wrong with your husband? If anything happens, he immediately yells, and even if nothing happens, he says, "You are really useless." If there's even the slightest thing he doesn't like, he hits me. On top of that, he said, "That's why I told you I hate sweets. What's with this sickly sweet smell? I forbid you from baking ever again," and threw out all my baking tools like my whisk and rubber spatula, even things that can be used for cooking without my permission. What? I did the housework properly. Baking was the only time I felt healed. But having that taken away from me, not knowing what to look forward to or work hard for, I fell into despair. I lost all my energy. Emily hung her head and sniffled. Inevitably, I started neglecting the housework, and my husband got furious, saying, "There's still dust. I told you to always have at least 3 side dishes. There are still wrinkles in my shirt." I endured it, but 3 days ago, he said, "I don't need a wife like you," and kicked me out of the house. No way. I was at home, so I wasn't wearing a coat, and I didn't have my wallet or phone. I had nowhere to go, barefoot. I could tell that Emily, covering her face with both hands, was in really bad shape. "Did you contact your parents' home?" "No. Actually, my mother passed away from illness a long time ago, and I was raised by my father the whole time." "What?" "When I got married, my father was overjoyed and said, 'Now I can rest easy.' I wanted to put my father's mind at ease. With only that in mind, I did my best and couldn't rely on anyone. For those 3 days, I had been sleeping in the park, but when I reached my limit in terms of hunger and mental state, my feet unconsciously turned toward your house." Emily's story was pretty harsh. "I'm sorry for bothering you, not just today, but up until now," Emily said. "You figured out that I was bringing sweets because I wanted to hear your thoughts and be praised, right? I'm really selfish. I'm sorry." Emily apologized to me while crying. "You don't need to apologize, Emily. More importantly, let's go to your father's place." "But I don't have parents anymore." "But you have someone you can rely on, and just maybe, I think your father would be happy if you relied on him." "You think so?" "Yeah, it's better to say what you can while they're still alive. If you regret not saying something after losing them, it'll be too late." When I persuaded her like that, Emily shed tears again. The next day, I lent Emily some of my mother's clothes and a bit of money, and she got in a taxi to go back to her parents' home. 3 weeks passed since I sent Emily back to her parents' place. Suddenly, a stern-looking man in a black suit came to my place. I felt like pretending I didn't see him and closing the door. The reason I didn't was because the man introduced himself as Emily's father. Believing his words, I invited him inside my house. I showed him to the living room of my old house, served tea, and we sat facing each other. He straightened his posture and looked straight into my eyes. "Thank you for convincing my daughter to come back home." "No need to thank me. So your daughter was able to safely return home." "I see. To be honest, I was worried her husband might obstruct her, so I was relieved. I am Emily's father, Brandon. My daughter is a bit sheltered, so if you hadn't convinced her, who knows what would have happened. I can't express my gratitude enough." Brandon's words cleared up a mystery I had been pondering for a while. As I thought, Emily seemed like a well-born lady. "Please accept this as a token of my appreciation." "What?" I said, surprised. "It's a deed to a 3-bedroom house on the top floor of that high-rise condo over there. Market price is $6 million. Here you go," he said, placing the deed on the table. Surprised by the sudden offer, I pushed the deed back and refused. "I don't need that. That's not why I helped her." "Then why did you help my daughter?" he asked while smiling. I was at a loss for a reply, but even if I said it was just normal kindness, he probably wouldn't believe me. "I'm sorry. I ended up falling for your daughter, for Emily. Of course, I never intended to do anything and haven't done anything. The reason I helped her was because I like her, because I didn't want to see Emily's sad face. I honestly spoke my mind. I heard about you from my daughter. The food, the clothes, even lending her your late mother's clothes. Just hearing about it made me realize how sincere and good you are. But meeting you directly like this, I feel that way even more," Brandon said. He held out the deed again and said with difficulty, "That's exactly why I hate to say this, But won't you live in a new house? This house is, well, quite old. Drafts come through the gaps, and it's so cold I suspect the insulation has been eaten by mice. Emily must have told him about that condition. That's why Brandon is trying to give me this deed with good intentions. This house is filled with precious memories of my late parents, so I want to keep living here forever. I'm sorry, even though you went to the trouble, I said with heartfelt apology. Brandon slowly shook his head. No, you truly are a kind-hearted person. Please, I ask that you take good care of my daughter. He looked straight into my eyes, saying that once more. Not understanding the true meaning behind his words, I tilted my head. But after that, I was able to get in touch with Emily through Brandon, and we were reunited. On my next day off, I was invited to Emily's parents' home and treated to homemade sweets. I fought many times over the sweets Emily makes have a gentle flavor. After that, I was able to divorce that man. What really? I asked. Yes, apparently he was terrible at work too, and his coworkers were complaining about how overbearing he was, so he was about to get fired. I figured as much. Hearing about his attitude toward Emily, I thought he was probably the same way at work. Well, regardless of that, I intend to properly squeeze consolation money out of him, Emily said, smiling. She had become an incomparably different woman than before. Emily said, I don't want to cause you trouble, so I'm going to get strong. I'll do my best. After Emily's divorce was finalized, we officially started dating. In our state, you can't treat Mary for 30 days after divorce. It seems that this waiting period exists because former spouses typically have 30 days to appeal a divorce agreement. After the divorce was finalized, we got married without issue a year later. Giving it simply way, Emily agreed to live in my family home, but as it is, it's too rundown. By the way, Emily's ex-husband already left that bait house too, due to consolation money and demotion, so I think Emily won't be bothered by it either. I was relieved about that too. Considering Brandon's feelings, he probably wants his daughter to live in a proper house. Realizing that, I resolved to renovate my family home. The renovation company was an acquaintance of Brandon's, someone who properly understood my feelings. Taking into account my desire to not erase my parents' memories, they renovated my family home while preserving its original look as much as possible. A few years later, we were blessed with a long-awaited child. Gazing at the children's room we had prepared for when we might have a child someday, I muttered, It's good to cherish memories, but we've got to cherish the future too. Emily, now my wife, said, That's right, but I want to cherish the past too. The present exists because of the past, so let's make lots of memories and build happiness in this house from now on. We smiled and expressed our gratitude to our parents in our hearts. As I gently stroked the growing belly of a happily smiling Emily, I felt hope for the future that was to come. My name is Matthew. I'm a 25-year-old working at a trading company. Since I've only been with the company for 3 years, I often feel like I still have a long way to go. However, even so, I rarely feel demotivated, thinking I'm no good. I think that's probably thanks to Kate, who was my direct boss and has now been promoted to department head at an exceptionally fast pace. Kate was the type of person who would grab the attention of employees just by walking through the office. The reason isn't just her work skills. Her sharp almond-shaped eyes, a nose as beautiful as a celebrity's, thin, well-shaped lips, and a tightly defined jawline with no excess made her a supremely beautiful woman in every aspect. Kate was so gorgeous that whenever she visited a client, there would always be a few people trying to win her over. Despite her exceptional work abilities, she had a delicate aura about her. Therefore, many male employees who knew it would be presumptuous to consider her as a romantic partner often looked at her with admiration bordering on longing. On top of that, she had a figure like a celebrity and a kind personality, while also having the capacity to gently push us forward. She was always calm and reliable. Except for a few envious male employees, she had always been well liked. Since joining this company, I was fortunate to have Kate as my boss and receive direct guidance from her. I think I was really lucky in that regard. Perhaps due to my naturally careless nature, she often had to remind me, listen first, then act. Don't forget to double-check even the smallest things before moving forward. The fact that I've been able to grow this far without incident is undoubtedly thanks to her. I never thought of her in an opportunistic way like some other male employees did, but I did admire her as a beautiful and capable person. The feelings I had for her were similar to those I might have for a favorite athlete or artist. However, being with her wasn't always a good thing. Because she was so skilled, she often pointed out minor details, and she never joked around. She wasn't the kind of person who was fun to talk to, and even when she spoke in a gentle tone, she showed almost no emotion whatsoever. So I was always nervous when talking to her. I was somewhat inarticulate and had a laid-back vibe, so I preferred talking to cheerful and pleasant colleagues or those who could brighten my mood just by chatting with them. Being with them lifted my spirits, and even if something unpleasant happened, the gloomy feeling would fade after talking to them. Being beautiful and good at your job is great, but I found myself more drawn to people who made me feel good when talking to them. But even that was just a matter of liking them as a person, regardless of gender. Nearly 2 years had passed without me being able to fully open up to Kate, who was now a department head looking after me. Even so, I thought that was fine. While it may be important for a leader to be gentle and approachable, if they get too close and become too friendly, I feel like they might not be able to tighten the reins when needed. That's why I thought Kate, who was matter-of-fact and didn't go out of her way to be overly friendly, had the qualities of someone who should be in a leadership position. Matthew, about the document you submitted the other day, there were a few minor points that needed revision, so I put some sticky notes on it. Could you please check it again? She said in a gentle voice. I hurriedly replied, I'm sorry. Thank you for taking the time to look it over despite your busy schedule. I'll revise it right away. She curved her beautiful lips and said, Yeah, thanks. Even though I didn't have any special feelings for her, she was always beautiful, and it made my heart skip a beat. They say that a person's character is more important than their appearance, but in terms of boosting work motivation, I think appearance is also important in a way. Looking at her makes me think that the ability to attract people is directly linked to the power to lead. And looking at her, I can't help but realize that appearance is a part of that. Of course, I know it's not just about that. Even after 2 years of interacting with her like this every day, I still found myself captivated by her beauty, and that hadn't changed. As I was caught up in work day after day, coming home to eat my favorite foods and take a breather, then diving into bed and falling asleep right away, the season turned to summer. Perhaps due to global warming in recent years, the summer heat feels almost tropical. I was getting exhausted just thinking about how the oppressive heat, which makes even walking outside a chore, was coming back to slowly attack my body from the inside. Due to the abnormal heat, the sales staff were especially warned to take care of their health. One day, as the intense heat was in full swing, I was scheduled to visit a client with Kate. Even though I was used to it, being alone with her still made me nervous as we rarely talked. With that thought in mind, I quietly waited for her to get into the passenger seat. However, even after the car started moving, she seemed nonchalant, as if the silence didn't bother her much. As usual, Kate said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Well then, shall we go?" "Yes," I replied and clumsily turned up the air conditioning, causing a gust of hot air to blow out. No matter how much we parked in the shade, it was still quite hot inside the car. The hot air was so intense that even Kate couldn't help but say, "It's hot." Seeing her like that when she's usually so composed made me feel a bit more at ease. I slowly started the car and began driving down the street. The car was engulfed in silence for a while, but soon Kate started talking about the client. From there, I asked questions and expanded the conversation, somehow managing to keep it going. It would take about 30 minutes by car to reach the client's office. Knowing that Kate had been very busy in the morning and hadn't had lunch, I asked, "We still have some time to spare. Shall we stop by a convenience store?" She looked a little pleased and said, "Yes, please." Worried about her, I asked, "You had so much work today, didn't you?" She replied with a nonchalant expression, "Yeah, the workload is totally different from before. I don't even have time for lunch." Seeing her like that, I felt the urge to help her return the favor somehow. "I see. If you're busy like today again, I can buy something that you can eat with one hand while working. Just let me know anytime." "Oh, I always go to the convenience store, so if you tell me, I can easily pick up anything for you," I offered. "Thank you, but most of the time I'm too busy to even convey that to you, so I'll just gratefully accept your kind gesture," she said, ending the conversation. Hearing her response, I reflected on my words. That's true. If she doesn't have time to eat lunch, there's no way she'd have time to ask me to buy something for her. I put my foot in my mouth again. As I was secretly feeling down, Kate said, "You always pay attention to those around you and try to help them. I think everyone is helped by someone like you. Thank you for always being considerate of others." Feeling a bit embarrassed but happy, I replied, "You're the one who's always watching over us like that, Kate. We're always motivated at work thanks to you." At that, she seemed extremely embarrassed. Maybe it's because I always thought of her as someone from a different world. Every time I saw her human side, I felt a sense of relief and warmth. Perhaps it's because I know she's a very compassionate person. Even though I get nervous around her, the silence with her doesn't make me restless, and there's a comfort in not having to force a conversation. Being with her isn't super fun or uplifting, but as I get more opportunities to see her relaxed impressions, I feel like I can be less tensed in her presence. After driving for a while, I parked the car in front of a convenience store. Kate said, "Sorry and thank you," as she was about to get out. Following her, I hurriedly said, "I'll buy something too," and opened the driver's side door. She got a sandwich and fruit juice while I got an iced coffee. We took a short break in the car where the air conditioning had finally started to kick in. Sighing and elegantly peeling off the plastic wrap, Kate took a bite of her sandwich. She looked much more tired than before. I thought to myself, it must be tough since she became a department head, and let myself be immersed in the sound of the radio. Without talking much, I quietly sipped my coffee, hoping that she could at least rest during this time. However, just before we reached Seat Corporation, our client, the car suddenly slowed down and came to a complete stop. Huh. What's going on? No matter how many times I tried to restart the engine, the car wouldn't start. I immediately called the company and arranged for the car to be towed. The place where the car broke down was a rather rural road, but fortunately, we were very close to our client, Seat Corporation. I suggested that she go ahead to Seat Corporation while I wait for the mechanic to pick up the broken car. That's when I noticed something was off about her. She started breathing heavily, her eyes narrowed in pain, and her face looked terribly ill. Come to think of it, I heard from my colleagues that she had been working on several projects simultaneously, and one particularly important project was a huge responsibility with a lot of things to do. It's no wonder she's not feeling well after working nonstop and being stuck in the scorching heat without air conditioning. "Kate, Seat Corporation is just over there. Let's have you rest there," I said, but she coldly replied, "Why?" "Kate, I know you don't have any leeway right now, but you clearly aren't feeling well, and you can't proceed with a meeting like this. Here, lean on me," I said and turned my back to her, crouching down. "You look like you're about to collapse. Please get on quickly." Surprisingly, she didn't resist and climbed onto my back. I moved slowly so that she wouldn't feel any worse, and I stepped into Seat Corporation. "Excuse me," I called out to the receptionist, who looked startled. "What's going on?" My boss, who is a company manager, seems to be feeling unwell, probably due to heat stroke. I was wondering if I could borrow some ice packs or something cold to cool her down. I'm sorry for asking this so suddenly. Would it be possible to let her rest somewhere? I asked without worrying about appearances. ##. The receptionist said, "That's terrible. Please wait, I'll check right away," and immediately asked one of the employees. "We have some. I'll have one of our employees come right away. So, could you please wait a moment?" "Thank you so much, that's a huge help," I replied. Despite my sudden request, the receptionist responded immediately without a hint of annoyance. In recent years, the fact that heat stroke can be life-threatening has been widely publicized, so everyone probably responded quickly. Thanks to that, I was relieved that Kate would be okay. Now, the employee hurried over. "Sorry for the delay. Please come this way," he said, and immediately led us to a room. Here, I brought ice bags, ice sports drinks, and towels. Please use all of these. Hearing about the heat stroke, he brought other things that might be necessary. On top of that, he even asked if we had enough. Deeply touched by his thoughtfulness, I quickly accepted the items and said, "Thank you so much." I placed an ice bag wrapped in a towel under Kate's arms. After resting for a while, her complexion and expression seemed to have calmed down considerably. After a while, she let out a small groan and woke up. "Kate, how are you feeling?" "Yeah, thanks. Because you noticed and I was able to rest like this, I'm feeling much better." "I'm glad," I said with relief. I felt like she was staring at me. Suddenly, I noticed that the bottle of drink I had handed her earlier hadn't decreased much. "Kate, if you're not feeling sick, could you please drink a little more?" I heard it's better to stay hydrated. She silently reached for the bottle and started drinking the sports drink. Then, after having her rest a bit more just in case, her complexion and appearance seemed to have recovered considerably. "So," I said, "please let me know when you think you can move. I think it'll be tough to even sit in a passenger seat if you're in pain like earlier." "Thank you. I'm feeling much better now," Kate said as she sat up. I continued observing her as she sat there for a while, and her expression no longer seemed to be in pain. So, I said, "Oh, you were feeling a bit better. That's great. Well then, I'll go check on the car." I hurried to where the car was. I had contacted the mechanic while Kate was sleeping, so they were waiting near the car. I explained the situation and had them tow the car. Then, I returned to the infirmary and informed the receptionist that she was feeling much better. I thanked them repeatedly, and the receptionist said, "I'm so glad to hear that," with a genuinely relieved expression. I wasn't sure if it was a coincidence or if he had been worried about her the whole time, but the employee from earlier happened to pass by and asked, "Is she feeling better?" "Yes, thanks to all of you. Thank you so much," I said, and bowed deeply. No, we just did what anyone would do." "Please raise your head," the employee said in a humble manner. "I'm glad we got to work with these people. I'm glad it was them that I happened to rely on today. Touched by their kindness, my heart felt warm." Then, one of our employees who was free came to pick us up. When we got in the car, Kate no longer had a pained expression. "I'm glad it seems your condition has improved," I said with a sigh. She still looked a bit surprised but smiled and said, "Yes, thank you for everything. You saved me, Matthew." But I was still worried that she might feel sick again, so I said, "Please let me know right away if you start feeling unwell. Even a slight illness can greatly affect your health going forward." Kate replied, "I understand." At first, she seemed reluctant to rest even when she wasn't feeling well, but now she honestly agreed, which relieved me. That being said, now that her condition had recovered, there was only one thing on her mind: how to catch up on work after returning. That's all I knew. Even if I told her not to push herself, there were circumstances where she had to, given her position. I understood that just telling her not to overdo it irresponsibly wouldn't be of any help to her, so I offered, if there's any work I can do, please let me know. I think I've been in your care a lot, Kate, but I feel like I haven't been able to return the favor yet. So, anything is fine, just tell me. However, she refused, saying, it's okay. Besides, there are many things that only I can do, so I don't think there's much you can help with. But I'm sure there are tasks that even I can do. Anything is fine. You're busy with preparations for that project, right? That's why I want to help in any way I can, please. Even though she refused once, I persistently pushed the issue, and before I knew it, we had arrived at the entrance of the company. Kate seemed to have no choice but to give in, and said, all right, well then, if you don't mind, could you help me a little with my work? Yes. From that day on, I started finishing my work quickly and helping Kate with her tasks. Normally, one would want to avoid such a situation as much as possible, but when I thought it was for Kate, I felt overflowing motivation. Perhaps it's because I have a strong sense of gratitude towards her for teaching me work so clearly and diligently in the past, turning me into a useful employee. For me, Kate had become someone I didn't want to see in pain, even if it meant exhausting my own strength. Of course, I had never felt this way about any other senior colleague before. Before I knew it, I might have started thinking of her as family or a cherished relative. I tried to take on as many tasks that anyone could do, working hard, harder each day, so that she could rest even a little. I thought I had reduced her burden a bit and allowed her to take it easy, but reality wasn't that sweet. The day before the presentation for the important project she had mentioned earlier, Kate was typing away with an unprecedentedly critical expression. However, her face looked more exhausted than ever, and her eyes were hollow. Her complexion was also terribly pale. She was probably rushing to do the final checks to ensure the presentation tomorrow would be perfect. As I watched her typing away without rest, I became increasingly worried. I mustered up the courage and said, Kate, if you keep looking so unwell and are about to collapse again, you won't even be able to do the presentation. Come on, let's call it a day here, and if you're worried, you can come in early tomorrow and check it again. But she wouldn't budge, saying, no, even if I go home like this, I don't think I'll be able to sleep because I'll be thinking about work, so I'll stay a bit longer. However, if she stayed late with that complexion, it seemed like she would end up like last time. To her, who wasn't considering her own well-being at all, I asked, Kate, you may think you can still push yourself, but remember when you became dizzy and couldn't stand for a while? You know that wasn't just because of the heat, right? But she said, but I keep thinking of more things I want to add, so I can't go home yet. If it really old me, I probably would have backed down here. But I don't want to see you go through that again. No matter how you look at it, you seem to be in as much pain as when you almost collapsed before. Even if you work now, there's a high chance of making mistakes. Let's go home. I strongly persuaded her, giving her no room for objection. Where do you live, Kate? I would never ask such a thing under normal circumstances, but at that moment, I was extremely worried about her. Perhaps overwhelmed by my intensity, she readily answered, "Oh, T-Town. I'll give you a ride home. I'm worried about you in this condition." Saying that, I made her save all her data and possibly took her out of the office. The usual Kate would have flatly refused even then, but perhaps she was considerably weakened. She silently followed my instructions. She was probably aware that she was actually in pain. Even so, she seemed unable to rest, feeling a great sense of responsibility for being appointed as a department head at the exceptionally young age of 3 years my senior. As we exited the entrance, I made her get into a taxi without giving her a choice. "I'm worried, so I'll accompany you," I said, but she declined out of politeness, saying, "No, that's too much." However, when I said, "I want to accompany you because I'm worried. It's better to have more people who can respond immediately if you start feeling unwell," Kate didn't argue further, perhaps because she had experienced it before. I had her tell the driver her home address, and the taxi slowly started moving. I was worried that riding in a car when she wasn't feeling well might make her feel even worse, but after a while, Kate rested her head against the window and quietly closed her eyes to rest. Despite looking so miserable that day, she had been working as if nothing had happened from the next day until today. I was worried that she might collapse again, so I stayed overtime with her every day. However, perhaps because she was putting on a brave face, she never seemed on the verge of collapsing. The taxi was driving slowly and gently, so it didn't seem like she would feel sick. Seeing her dozing off with a more relaxed expression than before, I felt relieved. The car continued to drive quietly for a while and soon stopped in front of a beautiful apartment building. "We've arrived," the driver said. "Thank you. Here you go," I replied. "All right, here's your change of $10. Kate must have been extremely tired. We exchanged words in a low voice so as not to wake her up, as she was still fast asleep. After paying the fare, I gently shook her shoulder. "Kate, we're here." "Oh, thank you." The fare." Saying that, I took her hand that was reaching for her bag and said, "I already paid, so please hurry back to your room and rest, Kate." As she got out of the taxi, she tried to take out her wallet again, saying, "No, I can't have you do that much for me." I stopped her hand again and said, "Before joining this company, I always thought I was a failure. I knew that people around me treated me like I was incapable and looked down on me. But now, thanks to meeting you, Kate, I really enjoy living and working. The reason I can spend my days without feeling miserable is that I joined this company and worked under you. You never scolded me harshly or showed anger or contempt. Even when I made mistakes, you calmly taught me tips to avoid mistakes and things to be careful about. You taught me work in a very easy-to-understand way, so I was finally able to become normal. I'm thrilled to be useful now, so please let me do this much." Kate listened to my sudden speech with her head down in silence. "But I want to handle money matters properly. For me, it's enough if you can do your job well at this company. That's my duty as a boss." Well, normally, no one would silently accept a taxi fare from a junior colleague. Not knowing what to say, I said, "Then please take me out for something delicious to eat next time. I think you'll be good for your health, Kate." She chuckled and said, "Okay." At that moment, for some reason, I felt that Kate had come to trust me a little. I was happy, feeling like the distance between us had narrowed a bit. Perhaps because she had slept a little, her complexion had improved considerably. Her expression, which had been strained and enduring something until earlier, now looked much more relaxed. That's good. I wonder if I was able to stop her from suffering again before it happened. Still, I felt frustrated that I didn't have enough strength to help her much. However, I was glad that I could save her when she was in a pinch and cooperate as much as possible to prevent her from overworking herself. I need to grow more and more myself. There are still few tasks that she can entrust to me. I want to grow quickly, just like her. I had always felt impatient about not being able to be useful to those around me, but this was the first time I felt so restless. That feeling was different from love, more like affection or something. It was close to the feeling of a chick thinking that the first thing it sees is its parent. Since I was worried until she safely entered her room on the 3rd floor, I decided to see her off to her doorstep. As expected, she was still walking unsteadily due to exhaustion, so I accompanied her to her doorstep. "You helped me again. Thanks to you, I feel like I've been able to avoid collapsing." "Thank you so much," she said and quietly entered her room. For some reason, I felt a sense of loneliness at the sound of the door closing. The next day, thanks to resting yesterday, Kate's complexion had improved, and the presentation was a great success. After that, she continued to work on the project smoothly with her team and achieved great success. Seeing her and her teammates being praised by everyone and looking happy, I felt somehow happy myself. At the same time, I became worried that she might overwork herself again by piling up work from now on. But she's a department head, so it can't be helped. I'll try to help her as much as I can from now on. With that thought, I desperately finished my own work every day and started going to ask her if there was anything I could do. However, she refused, saying, "That project is over now, so it's fine. You should focus on your own work. Besides, I'd be in trouble if you overwork yourself this time." But I still didn't feel like backing down. "I don't want to see you like that again, Kate. No matter how much you've been promoted, I don't think you have to take on everything by yourself. You're not considering your own health enough. Please rely on us more. Please be more aware of what your body is telling you when it's in pain." In the end, I felt like I was losing strength, but I conveyed my feelings with all my might. Then she said, "I didn't think you were the type to assert yourself so strongly at first, but I give to you, Matthew. All right, if there's something I can ask for your help with again, I'll let you know." She smiled softly, looking a bit more relaxed than before. A few days later, under the guise of a celebration, Kate took me to a rather fancy small restaurant as a thank you for taking care of her and paying for the taxi. By this time, she had become much more relaxed when talking to me and shared her upbringing and why she had become unable to finish work well. She said that she had never been able to make friends she could truly trust, even at part-time jobs, and tended to be isolated because she couldn't communicate well with everyone. She had struggled to interact with various people in college and managed to maintain superficial relationships to the extent that she didn't make others uncomfortable. However, she graduated from college without making anyone she could consider a close friend. As everyone said, "It's because I'm a boring person that I can't make friends, right? So I've been working hard to at least become someone who is needed at work." Then one day, I realized that I don't have anyone I can rely on and say, "Please help me because I'm in pain." That's why I've always thought that I can't push work onto my colleagues just because I'm not feeling well. I believe that as a working adult, it's normal to endure even if you're not feeling well. But after meeting you, Matthew, I feel like I've finally been able to break down that belief a little. I never thought someone would come along and tell me it's okay to rely on them. You kept saying I'm amazing, but to me, you're far more amazing for always thinking about helping everyone and being able to talk to everyone without distinction. Seeing you having fun talking with everyone makes me realize that there are more important things in life than just work performance. As she spoke, narrowing her eyes as if cherishing something, my heart started racing. It was the first time I had been praised for my personality and way of living like this. That day, we talked about various things such as our past lives, what we had been thinking about, and childhood stories. It was a really nice dinner. She thinks she's someone who can only work, but that's not true. From her attitude, I can really tell that she wants to explain things clearly to us and is considerate enough to not want us to work too hard. Her thoughtfulness comes across even if she seemed cold at first glance. When I told her that, she smiled softly as if a flower had bloomed. Seeing that expression, I felt even more strongly that I wanted to continue working with her, and I wanted to support her so that she would not overwork herself. During the morning rush hour, the train station was packed with people. What caught my eye, right in front of the ticket gates, was a woman who had been bumped into by a man walking with momentum, causing her to kneel on the ground. In the process, her glasses fell off her face and landed on the ground. A passerby who walked past her stepped on and crushed those glasses. The sound of a crack echoed in my ears. In shock from the scene unfolding before me, I quickly approached the woman and spoke to her. "Are you okay? My name is John. I'm a 42-year-old single man who has never been popular with the ladies, having no girlfriend for as long as I've lived. Since graduating from college, I've always worked at the headquarters of a major travel agency, living a life without any significant promotions. I don't really have any hobbies, and my only pleasure is going to explore cafes on weekends. I don't have any friends to hang out with either, but I always thought I was pretty happy. The job is easy, my income is stable, and financially, I'm doing just fine. My parents back home are healthy, without any illnesses, living their lives in good spirits. However, a time came that threatened my peaceful life. There was a change in my department's management. The new boss was named Richard, 5 years older than me, and he had a terrible attitude, always picking on others. He always made fun of me for being single. Is that why you're over 40 and still can't get married? I guess even women can tell when a guy's incompetent at work. Every day, I was subjected to such constant snide remarks, and no matter what I did, I was always criticized. This wore me down mentally, and the little motivation I had for my job completely vanished. I'd admit I'm not the best at my job. I'm clumsy, slow, and I tend to make careless mistakes. It's hard for me to learn new things, and I just mechanically go through my daily tasks without being able to adapt to unexpected situations. Still, I believed I was doing my best in my own way, but to my boss, I seemed to be nothing but a source of irritation. Then, one day, I got a sudden call from my boss Richard, who was on a business trip in a remote area, perhaps somewhere like Nebraska. He was furious. "John, you gave me the wrong time for today's meeting, didn't you?" The client was livid. "What are you going to do about it?" "Wait, what are you talking about? You told me the meeting was at 4:00 p.m., right?" "It wasn't at 4:00 p.m. It was at 2:00 p.m. We were 2 hours late. Do you realize how embarrassing that was?" "But I clearly told you it was at 2:00 p.m. "Shut up. Just shut up, you useless fool." I remember clearly telling him it was at 2:00 p.m. It wasn't my mistake, but Richard wasn't willing to listen. "Because of you, we couldn't seal the deal with the client's hotel. We traveled all the way out here for nothing. This is on you, and you will be held responsible." Today's meeting was with a long-established luxury inn in a popular tourist destination. If we couldn't secure a contract with them, it would be a significant blow to our company. From that day on, the headquarters was bustling, searching for alternative inns and making changes to our plans. And just as Richard had said, in April of the following year, I was transferred from the headquarters to a branch in the suburbs. It's what you'd call a demotion. The branch was over an hour-and-a-half commute from my home, but I felt relieved to be away from Richard. Being a perpetual rank-and-file employee with no hopes of promotion, I thought a demotion wouldn't matter much. That's what I tried to convince myself of. I figured I'd get used to the customer service tasks I wasn't fond of over time. On my first day at the new job, I saw a woman fall at the station and approached her to help. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" The woman took my hand and slowly got up. "I can't find my glasses." "I can't see anything without them," she said with concern. But her glasses had been smashed on the ground. When I explained this to her, she looked distressed. "What am I going to do? The optician won't be available at this hour. I can't go to work like this." The woman was a beautiful individual, probably in her early 30s. "Do you have a spare pair of glasses at home?" I asked, and she nodded. "Yes, I have an old pair I used to wear." "In that case, let your workplace know you'll be late and head back home. I'll guide you to the taxi stand." "Really? Thank you so much for your kindness." She bowed deeply in gratitude. Afterward, I let her hold onto my arm and led her to the taxi stand in front of the station. She thanked me repeatedly, got into a taxi, and left. Darn it, I need to get to the office quickly today. ***, my first day at the new branch ***. I've been transferred to helping a woman with broken glasses at the station, and then being late was totally unexpected. I hardly arrived at my workplace and checked the time, luckily making it right before the start time. I quietly peeked inside and approached the oldest-looking guy in the room, though he only seemed to be in his mid-30s. He looked younger than me. "Hello, I'm John, transferred here from the headquarters." "Oh, you're John. I've heard about you. I'm Mike, the assistant manager. "The branch manager will be a bit late today," Mike said, beginning to give me instructions. "John, this is your desk. First, please familiarize yourself with all the brochures we have on display at the front." "Understood," I replied. I followed his instructions, picking up each travel brochure from the front and began reviewing them at my desk. About an hour later, a woman entered the office. "Good morning," Emily greeted her. "Morning. Sorry I'm late," she responded. I looked up from my desk to see her face. "Oh," I couldn't help but exclaim. Turns out the woman referred to as the manager was the same woman I helped at the station this morning, the one who broke her glasses. However, she didn't seem to recognize me. It made sense. She couldn't see my face back then without her glasses. "Have we met somewhere before?" she asked with a puzzled look after I unintentionally raised my voice. "Ah, no. I mistook you for someone else." I blurted out the response without thinking. "I see. I'm the branch manager, Emily." "Nice to meet you," she said with a smile, her brown-framed glasses suiting her perfectly. And so my first day at the branch began. That evening, the staff threw a welcome party for me. We gathered around a table at a local bar near the office, toasted, and engaged in various conversations. Emily sat next to me. Honestly, having a boss who's probably a decade younger and a woman at that seemed a bit awkward. But once I got to know her, I found that Emily was a very polite woman who showed proper respect for her elders, even to a subordinate like me. At the same time, she didn't hold back when she needed to say something as a superior, making it easy to work with her. "You work at a slow pace, but you are very meticulous, aren't you? With your calm and gentle way of speaking, I bet the customers like you," Emily complimented me. Even when I made small mistakes, she said, "Everyone makes mistakes. As long as you take responsibility and handle it properly, it's all good." She would encourage me, and I grew quite fond of her. She's a stark contrast to my former boss. She's a good person. Not just the manager, but all the staff were kind and cheerful, creating a warm and friendly work environment. Thanks to Emily, I gradually gained confidence, got used to the customer service tasks, and began to enjoy my work, seeing the satisfied faces of the customers I attended to, which gave me a pleasant sense of accomplishment. However, one day after work, I decided to grab a drink and a bite to eat. I stopped by a local tavern near the office by myself. Isn't that Emily and the assistant manager? Unaware of my presence, they were engaged in a conversation. If things keep going this way, our branch is headed for closure. We only have a month left until the headquarters deadline. Catching up now seems tough. Closure? What's going on here? I couldn't help but eavesdrop on their conversation. Emily, noticing me, seemed taken aback. "John, did you hear our conversation?" "Emily, what do you mean by closure? What's going to happen to our branch, to all of us?" "Well, now that you've heard, it's only fair to fill you in," she sighed. I was invited to join their table. The truth is our branch has the lowest sales in the entire country. The headquarters told us that if we don't move up to at least the top 20 by the end of next month, they'll close our branch. Top 20. That's a tall order. Our company has over 50 branches nationwide. Jumping from the very bottom to more than halfway up the rankings seems almost impossible. With these thoughts, I looked at Emily's face, and she looked as if she was on the verge of tears. I love everyone at our branch so much, but if we close down, everyone will be scattered apart. I just can't bear that thought, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. Seeing her like that, I couldn't help but muster all my courage and say, "Don't worry, Emily. We still have time. Let's aim for a spot in the top 20 sales. First, we need to discuss this with everyone and pull together as a team." "You're right, John. We should definitely talk to everyone." The next day, Emily addressed the entire branch staff during the morning meeting, seeking their cooperation. If anyone has a good idea that could increase our sales, please don't hesitate to suggest it. Upon hearing Emily's words, Mike quickly raised his hand. Emily, how about we reconsider the layout of the store? Change the layout? Well, it might be worth a try. How about rearranging the brochures to make them more visible? What if we adjust the direction of the lighting? It feels a bit dim as it is. How about creating handwritten display signs? What about distributing flyers in front of the train station? Ideas were pouring in from the staff. A few days later, the store was noticeably brighter and livelier. Could it be due to the flyers we've been handing out near the train station? More customers started to visit our store. If things keep going this way, our sales might see a significant boost. I've been putting in overtime every day. After getting home, I read potentially helpful books to increase sales, and I researched on the internet. I even gave up my days off to help distribute the flyers. This was the first time I'd ever been so consumed with my job, but it didn't feel like a burden. On the contrary, every day felt exciting, striving towards a goal. It's such a joyous feeling. For the 20 years I spent at the headquarters, I dealt with the monotony of the same tasks every day, never feeling the satisfaction or motivation. The days felt so dull. But now, I wanted to give my all for Emily and everyone else. One day, a couple visited our store. Those folks were the honeymooning couple I had assisted before. We brought back a gift for you, John, as a token of our appreciation, they said. They were customers who had difficulty deciding on their honeymoon destination. They had disagreements and even almost canceled their plans. It was quite a challenging situation. Thanks to you, we returned safely. Our honeymoon was fantastic. Thank you so much. The couple looked genuinely happy and grateful. The German sweets they gifted were shared among all the staff at our branch. I'd never felt so appreciated at work before. I was so overwhelmed with joy that I felt tears welling up. I decided then and there to continue serving all our customers wholeheartedly. A month later, the national sales rankings were announced. Our branch ranked 25th. We couldn't break into the top 20, but it was a significant improvement from being at the bottom. However, the business world is tough, and rules are rules. The next morning during the staff meeting, Emily spoke. We've officially been notified by the headquarters today. This branch will be closing at the end of this month. The staff were visibly deflated, with some even breaking into tears. I believe most of you will be transferred to the headquarters or other branches. HR should contact you about your new placements soon, the manager continued with a somber expression. Everyone, I know it's tough, but let's keep our chins up. Going from the bottom to the 25th rank is an incredible achievement. It's a testament to the hard work we all put in together. Let's take pride in what we've accomplished. Hearing the manager's words, the staff exchanged glances. We did work hard, didn't we? Absolutely. It's an amazing accomplishment. How about we all go out tonight and celebrate? Sounds great, the staff chattered in agreement. I felt a great sense of accomplishment. The past month of working together and giving our best was fulfilling and fun. I'm not sure which branch I'll be transferred to next, but no matter where I go, I'll always cherish the memories of my time here and continue to give my best. On my way home from the celebratory drinks that night, Emily approached me. John, can we have a private conversation for a moment? Oh, of course. I don't mind. The two of us entered a nearby bar and took seats at the counter. John, I'll get straight to the point. Would you like to return to the headquarters? If you do, I can speak with HR to arrange a transfer for you. She looked intently into my eyes as she said this. No, I don't wish to go back to the headquarters, I replied without hesitation. Oh, may I ask why? Yes, I really enjoy interacting with customers directly. I believe I'm suited for customer service. It's a revelation I had only after coming to this branch. I see, so you prefer to continue working at a branch then. It seems she was concerned about me, perhaps thinking I was transferred here from the headquarters as some sort of demotion. Thank you, I appreciate your concern. Emily gave a shy smile in response. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done, John. Remember when you suggested that we break the news of the closure to everyone? That decision fostered a sense of unity among the staff and contributed to the increase in sales. Regardless of the final outcome, we all did great work together, and it was fulfilling. Well, I didn't do anything special. On the contrary, it was thanks to you, Emily, that I enjoyed my job so much. At the headquarters, I had a rough time with superiors. I told her about the supervisor at the headquarters, Richard. Despite being older and still single, he mocked me constantly, bullied me, and even falsely accused me of mistakes I didn't make, leading to my transfer. That sounds awful. You must have had a tough time, she said with sympathy. Then she looked at me with a determined expression and said, John, how about we get back at Richard? What? Can we really do that? Yes, actually. I'm the CEO's daughter. Right now, I'm here at the branch for training, but I plan to assist my father at the headquarters and learn the ropes of being the CEO. I couldn't do anything about the branch closure this time, but I do have some influence over HR. I was taken aback by her revelation. I had no idea she was the daughter of the CEO. Let's report Richard's bullying to HR. There should be some sort of action taken against him. I nodded deeply in agreement with her words. On our way back, as we walked side by side towards the station, she slipped and almost fell. In a split second, I reached out and supported her. Oh, thank you. No worries. It would be a hassle if your glasses broke again. She looked puzzled at my comment. Huh. How do you know about that? Oops, she hadn't realized I was the one who helped her that day. Could it be? Were you the one who helped me back then, John? Well, yes. So it was you. Oh my, you should have told me. My glasses were off and I couldn't see clearly. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. It's okay, but I'm glad I know now. I always wanted to properly thank the person who helped me that day. I was initially hesitant, but due to Emily's insistence, we decided to go out for a meal together. She said she wanted to treat me as a thank you for that day. Later, I was transferred to a different branch. Surprisingly, Emily was transferred there as well. Afterward, I heard that Richard from the headquarters was sent to a strict subsidiary company, rumored to be a kind of exile, thanks to Emily reporting his bullying. On the other hand, my accomplishments at the branch were recognized and I was promoted to a department head. It's almost time for our reservation. Let's go. Today is the first time I'm having a meal alone with Emily. Even though I'm nervous, I'm really looking forward to it and hope this will be an opportunity to deepen our relationship. I'm very content with my new job, where I find the work enjoyable and fulfilling.